Good evening, good morning, good afternoon out there. Whenever you see this episode today, The Power of Forgiveness. I'm Jonathan Bangle, host of Naked Tax Talk, where babies we bear down to the naked truth about our personal lives, our business lives, and our tax lives. I'm always asked this question, why, JB, do you have to show up naked? And I always say it's because this is where I cultivate courage. Nakedness is about having courage. Nakedness is about being authentic. Nakedness is about power. Today, I was really thinking about, what the topic I wanted to be. And sometimes before I do a show, I oftentimes will think, well, what's the topic? And I actually had an amazing phone call from my mother not too long ago, actually this week. And she just called me and she just wanted to talk to me. And she just wanted to talk. She just wanted to be heard. She just wanted to be seen. And it got me crying actually on the phone because I realized in that moment that in many, many, many ways, I personally forgive my mom for the type of childhood that we had. And part of forgiveness is also developing a heart of compassion and a part of part of compassion. Yeah, that's what I just said. Part of compassion and developing a part of understanding. In terms of understanding that my mom, she did what she could do in the best of her ability during those times. So I kind of want to just share a little bit about what it is about forgiveness, because forgiveness is what I've discovered, anyways. It's the ability to let go. It's the ability to say, I choose to no longer hold on to the hurt. I choose to no longer hold on to the way that people treated me, or the way they look at me, or the way they expect me to be. Forgiveness is about not hanging on to the anger that comes up. As a matter of fact, I started thinking about forgiveness. And really, what it boils down to is something called anger, which for practicing Buddhists, we believe that it is the root of evil. It comes from the root of all evils. Anger is one of the largest roots that exist, because inside of that anger, it manifests itself into a whole bunch of things: physical elements, mental elements, spiritual elements, you name it. It just manifests and it eats and it deteriorates everything that we are as a person. I know for a fact that every single one of us have been hurt by someone else, by animals, by insects. I mean, all kinds of different things, by events that have occurred. And the reality is the way we overcome it is by letting it go, to forgive. I remember one time someone had said to me that I forgive you, but I will not forget. And that particular phrase, I forgive you, but I will not forget, has always confused me, because I never understood how one can be about um, letting go, because that's what forgiveness is, but not forgetting, because that means that I've placed a condition on letting go. I've At that point, they've chosen to hold on to still the hurt and the pain behind whatever actions might have been committed, the words were said, or vice versa. And so, needless to say, it never understood. I never understood that. Forgiveness is truly the point in which we arrive, in which we let it all go, where we finally just say, whatever was said, whatever was done, I will not harbor anymore. And the liberating effect is it allows us to move forward, to step into our self of who we really are, which I know for a fact that every single one of us, we are all about love, kindness, giving, sharing, you name it, all these beautiful, positive things. We are all of that. And I know that's true for every single one of us. So the idea of holding on to anger, holding on to sadness, holding on to jealousy, holding on to all of these other negative things only drags us down further and further. I mean, I can think about the times where I have had actions what I thought at the time were done to me. When we think about the phrases that we use, like she bullied me, he spat on me, they beat me up, they don't like me, they're always taking things away from me, they don't think that I'm this or that I'm that. That is the victimhood mindset, I personally believe, anyways, that is constantly re injuring ourselves, holding on to the anger, holding on to the sadness, holding on to the negative things, instead of trying our best to spin it around and to say, well, actually, they are suffering in the same exact way that I am suffering as well. And that's really hard to grasp a mind around, right? To say the bullies and the events that have transpired, et cetera, the people, like our parents or our relatives or whatever, the bad shit that people do to us, it's hard to wrap our mind around that and say it's actually not being done to us. We think it's being done to us. But the spin around is that the reality is that they too are suffering just like you and me. Everyone is suffering in the same exact way. We all suffer from hunger. We all suffer from thirst. We all suffer from, are you ready? Wanting to be accepted. We all suffer from wanting to break out of the shell of constraints about what people think about us and allow ourselves to be the shining bright light that every single one of us is. That's about. My father, I don't talk about him very much, but my father, um, he would say when I was a child, Jonathan, if you just understand this, you can attract more bees with honey than you do vinegar. And I actually never understood the man. I always was like, what the hell does he mean you'll attract more bees with honey than you will with vinegar? Of course, bees won't come to the vinegar, they'll come to the honey. And I realized that that metaphor simply means that on one hand, yes, it could mean that if we're kind to others, they will come and be drawn to us. If we give, people will give back. I get that. But the other coin is letting go and seeing the forgiveness in what others do. Their suffering is a relationship to their own sense, their own gratification of finding their sense of happiness. You see, every single living being on this planet, from the insects, the animals, to us, gods, demigods, you name it, all of us, we're seeking one singular point, and that is to be happy. That is our wish. If we were truly be honest right now and ask ourselves, what is your wish? Now, sometimes we say things like, well, I want more money. I want more cars. I want more lovers. I want more business. I want more money. I want less taxes, right? All those things can be narrowed down to one focal point, and that is happiness. Every single one of us is making this wish to be happy. And what I say next is this, because every single one of us wants to be happy, including me. Look, I have my talk show. I want to be seen and heard. That's the reality, right? I'm suffering from the belief that I'm not seen and heard. So every single one of us has this wish. And what we do is we do everything in our power to mitigate the suffering, whether it's physical suffering, mental suffering, spiritual suffering, but suffering. And so we go out of our way to fulfill our sense of happiness. We do everything that we can within our power to make us who we are. And so what do? Well, here's a great example. When we're hungry, let's say, and for meat eaters, there's nothing wrong with this, by the way. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying is the example is meat eaters, for example, say, well, I'm really hungry. So I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go hunt the rabbit, or I'm going to go hunt the chicken, or I'm going to go hunt whatever. And we take its life in exchange for feeding our hunger. But most of the times, we don't even understand that when we are ending our suffering, we're actually causing the suffering of someone else. It's really took me a long time to understand this concept, that for every action I'm taking, how is it impacting the suffering of someone else? Now, here's where wisdom always shines, because wisdom will always come up and say, absolutely, JB, absolutely, Jonathan, you're hungry, you're suffering, so you need to eat, right? Because if you don't eat, you'll die. And then what good are you to bring forth messages like today? If you're dead, what good are you, right? So instead, we make conscious decisions to say, well, instead of taking the life of someone else, an animal in this case, to fulfill my hunger, which is pain, which is my suffering, I can say, well, what's another way in which I can still get the nutrients and I can still feed myself while not causing the suffering of someone else? I mean, that's the reality of what each and every one is going through. It's about understanding that every person that we've encountered that have done things to us or with us, we too have done the same thing to someone else, because we're just not aware. We're not aware. We're not conscious that every time we're trying to fulfill our own happiness, it can impede on someone else's happiness and their suffering, which is why it's so important that when we make decisions, we also think about them. Yes, think about us. Yes, put us first. Absolutely. I'm not saying not to. But I'm also saying at the same time that we have to consider someone else. So forgiveness plays into this, because forgiveness allows us to let go, allows us to no longer hold on to the pain that someone else has caused us. You know, I was thinking of an example, and that was when I was a teacher. So, for some of you, you know this, and some of you don't know this, but I actually taught. I have a master's degree in secondary education. I had actually fulfilled what I thought, I actually fulfilled my life's purpose, and that was to be a teacher since the time I can remember 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, something like that. But I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. In fact, many of you know the story, but when I was about, I think it was 11 or 12 years old, my mother for Christmas, instead of the typical underwear and socks that we got every year, my mother bought me a chalkboard. And I jokingly say that's when I ruined my brothers and my cousins' lives, because I turned them into my students and I played school with them. That is like the ultimate truth when it comes to my kickoff of being a teacher in the very beginning. And so my ability to fulfill my wish to be a teacher came true in 2010. I graduated with my master's degree and I entered the workforce as a teacher. And I immediately started teaching seventh grade English. I did that for a few years, and then I would move into my freshmen and then seniors as well, teaching them English, teaching, fulfilling my life, my dream, like my purpose. I was like on cloud nine. I was in hog heaven, enjoying every moment of my life. I wasted no time waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning and in the classroom by 6:30, preparing for 7:05 when the bell would ring, when the students would come in, and then my job was to also wake them up and get them just as excited to learn about boring nouns, adjectives, verbs, you name it, right? English stuff. And unfortunately, I would be a victim of of discrimination. However, I remember one day when my husband and I walked across the Camino de Santiago. And I tried doing some chapters on it on my show already, but essentially what it is, it's a 900-kilometer or 560 miles approximately walk. And you start in southern France and you end in a town just shy of the east of the Atlantic Ocean called Santiago. And this is where the remains of St. James are said to be buried. I did not know this at the time of this journey. My husband, when we watched the show The Way, we thought that it was going to be a walk like you would walk at a park. Little did I know we would be climbing up mountains, we'd be on cliffs, we would be taking freaking cold showers, my knees would be swollen, my ankles would feel like they'd fall out. I would be in so much pain every single day for 35 days, every walk, every step I took. I was in utter pain. And on this Camino, to this day, I always say that I experienced birth, middle age, aging, literally sickness, and death. And that's the part I want to skip through in this particular story. I want to get to the death. So it's the very last day of walking for the past 34 days, 8-9 hour days of walking, 15, 20 miles a day, sometimes a mile or two, depending on weather or if you're climbing up steep climbs. And it's there that I'm walking, realizing, knowing that I have about 12 more kilometers. I knew that we were going to arrive at the final destination in the late evening or early afternoon. I knew that based on our walking history. And as we started to walk, and I started going up and down the small little hills, making our way to Santiago, I remembered a teaching of Buddha. And he had taught us that if we could think about the time of our death, what would we do differently? Which is ironic because this is the question that even my own speaking coach, Iman Agay, shared with us. If we knew the time of our death, how would we show up differently? What would we do differently so that our eulogy would read the way we want it to read? And so I started thinking about that. And because I had already meditated and learned about death, that in death, everything is left behind. We don't take our cars. We don't take our houses. We don't take our money. We don't take our fame. We don't take our titles. We don't take our name, our gender, our sexuality. We take nothing. Absolutely pure, utter nothing. We leave what we arrived with and what we left with, really. And so I started thinking about, well, the first thing I would do is I would think about the kindness of others. And so the first place that I went to think about was my own mother. Because let's be real, she's the closest to my inner circle of my life. In fact, she was very much involved in my life, obviously, for 18 years. And so right away, I started thinking about my mom, and I started asking and telling myself these questions. More importantly, I started saying these statements. My mother had a choice. She could have either given birth to me like she did, or she could have terminated the birth. And there would be nothing here right now in this moment with you. My mother had that choice. So she chose to bring me into this life. And so with that, I started to be thankful for my mother. I started to thank my mother to myself for her kindness, for choosing to bring me into this life, for agreeing to bring me here so that I can live my life's purpose. And as I thought about my mother's kindness, I also thought about, my mom was never verbally abusive. What I mean by that is she never said things like, you're worthless, you're stupid, you're an idiot, you're this. She never said those things. I will give her credit for that. She always said the opposite. You're smart, you're intelligent, you're brilliant, you're maestro, my maestro. Thank you, honey. I love you. God loves you. People love you. She always said these things, these beautiful, kind things. Sure, she was very strict with her discipline. She would physically hit us with sticks to discipline us. I call that physical abuse. Most of us call that physical abuse. But I thought about that and I thought, man, my mom was really kind because she did love me unconditionally. I would think that most mothers love their children unconditionally. And I thought about that and I just soaked in the feeling of what that felt like to know that at the end, my mother did love me. To know at the end that my mother does love me. Then I thought about my younger brother, who my younger brother I absolutely love and I adore so much. Sure, he likes to do his things his way, but listen, this is part of our genetics. We're stubborn sometimes. And I love my brother so much. And I started thinking about him. And I started thinking, here's my brother. When we were kids, it was always him and I, equal punishment, right? No matter who started what or did what, equal punishment. 10 slappings apiece every night, right? 2-hour lectures by my mother. That's where I get the talking from. My mother has this natural gift too to talk. And so I thought about my brother. And I thought about the times that he actually defended me against the bullies. I thought about the times that he actually tried to bring me a girlfriend, because at that time, of course, he thought I was straight. I mean, what a beautiful thing that a young brother does this. And then as I got older, I thought about my brother and how he has still had my back and how he still protects me. And he still brings me kindness and love. And so with that, I started to generate again more compassion for him. I started to generate more love for him. And then I went outside of that. I started thinking about my cousins, my aunts, my uncles. And then I went all the way to the pig people who pick the coffee beans at the coffee plantations, and how they get up every morning, and how they go onto the plantations and they pluck all of the coffee beans and put them into canisters under the sweltering conditions I'm sure they work under. And they put it all in a basket, they give it to the next person, and that person takes and processes it, and all the people involved, just so that I have the luxury of drinking coffee every morning. I started thinking about the kindness that they also do for me. And then I started thinking about all the people that take the cotton, take the various materials, and they pick it. Like my mother, when she was growing up, she was a cotton picker, she was a corn picker, she was a sugarcane picker. Not just her, but my other aunts and my uncles, all 15 of them were required to get up in the morning as soon as the sun was up and go and pick all of these commodities that you and I today take for granted. And that's what they all did for the benefit of our happiness. So I thought about all the people that pick all of our goods, the food that we eat, the clothing that we wear, the people who sew it and stitch it together. And so it developed inside of me such a sense of compassion and love and kindness, even inside of myself, that I too wanted to give back, that I too wanted to make a conscious effort to be kind to others. Then finally, I started to think about all of my conditions. Here I was, 34 days, exhausted, 550-ish miles I had already walked every day. Every day. And I started looking back at that and saying, wow, you know, if it wasn't for the people who had systematically pushed me around, who had bullied me in the classroom, not my kids, but others, if it wasn't for them, I would have never, ever looked up the answer to my suffering, which would become my Buddhist faith. I would have never gone into the temple and learned about meditation. I would have never learned that. I would have never gone on this trip, on this pilgrimage, with the mindset of seeing Buddha's teachings come to life moment by moment, day by day. And so from that, I looked at the people that had discriminated against me in the classroom, in my career, the ones that had essentially ended my dream. But did they? You see, did they? I don't think so. But back then, I sure thought they did. And I realized if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been in that moment to reflect upon my own death in a positive way, to reflect upon me having the desire to be kind to others and to give and to love and to be me, who I am. And so what I did in my mind is I let go of the hurt and the pain. I looked at them and I said, they too suffered in the same way. They too dealt with the same things I was dealing with, the same pains. And it's actually through them that they became not my enemies, but they actually became my teachers. They actually became my inspiration. And I let all of what they did, I let it go. I stepped into the forgiveness and I forgave them. And I cried and I cried and I cried. I also forgave my mother at the same time, again, and my brother and every other experience I had been through. And when I did that, when I out loud forgave them, it set me free. It allowed me to open up my heart to accept the new things that come to me. And this, my friends, is how I know that the power of forgiveness is so strong. Because I know that when we forgive, the universe comes back and says, now that you've forgiven, you have a heart full of joy and compassion and love and all these beautiful things. Now you can move forward. Now you are ready. Now is the time to step into your purpose. You know, the power of forgiveness is just as powerful in our businesses. You know, I know many of us that watch this show are entrepreneurs. And how many times have we encountered a client that has basically devalued us, have given us the runarounds, have given us problem about paying us for our time and our effort? And let's admit it, we build a degree of resentment inside of our heart, inside of our mind. How dare they? How dare they not pay me? Oh, here I go again, having to do all of this work. That happened to me. It's happened to me many times, as I know it's happened to you guys many times. And I remember one particular client that I absolutely thought the world of. And I know they thought the world of me. And unfortunately, we came to a disagreement in our business life cycle. And it hurt me, just like I know I hurt them. And in the very beginning, I remember thinking to myself, JB, let's start looking for how you contributed to their suffering like they contributed to yours. And that's okay, because I'm not going to own it. And what I discovered is that the moment I was able to tap into their suffering, it helped me as a business owner to move forward. What I mean by that is that I was flexible. That's what my friend Charlene says. I became flexible when I was able to let go of the hurt and the pain and the anger. And I was able to look at them and their suffering, just like I was suffering about being paid for what I had done. They were suffering from the idea of, I have to let go of my money, the thing that brings me security, the things that allows me to pay my mortgages and my employees. And so we came to a head. And so what I did is, to myself, I forgave them for what happened. You see, wisdom kicks in and says, you don't have to pick up the phone and say you're sorry. Because here's the truth. It's always on us. It's always on us. It's from our perspective. This environment, this world, this thing that we're through, it's from our own perspective. Our two eyes looking out and our mind interpreting the environment, and then depending on our karma determines whether it's a good experience or a bad experience. But I sat there in the middle of the night asking how it is that I can develop a heart of compassion for them, and I did. What I saw happen was truly remarkable. I was able to negotiate through, of course, legal counsel, and negotiate to an end result. I was able to say, look, I get it. Services, money, etc., just let it all go. Let's come to an agreement. And we did. And what I discovered subsequently thereafter is that when I stopped holding on to the anger that they shorted me, they threw me under the bus, they did this, when I let all of that go, I was able to see the world in a whole new light. I was able to see all of my clients in a whole new light. That they ultimately want the transformation that I know I took for myself. That they ultimately want to keep more of their money and pay less in taxes. That they ultimately want to pay less, they want to be free of an audit, or they at least want to know that if they go through an audit, they'll be protected and they'll come out the other side smiling. I was able to look at all the people that talk to me, not as, oh, great, someone wants to pick my brain. Oh, great, somebody just wants to come in here and do XYZ. We've all been there. Let's be real. Let's be naked about it. Instead, I look at it and go, how can I help them through their suffering? How can I help them to take them from where I used to be into the most amazing people and person that they are? Because that's what I know to be true for myself. It worked for me. It's worked for others. It's worked for many more of my other clients. Now, let's talk about the forgiveness, the power of forgiveness when it comes to your taxes. Are you ready? Just like in my book, I always start out with saying something to the effect of F, in this case, is for forgiveness. Uncle Sam understands principally the power of forgiveness. He too, as a government, really understands what it means to forgive. He understands that if he forgives you, it will transform your life so much so that if you make a promise to yourself and to the universe to forever change, to never be where you were before you had the tax problem, Uncle Sam knows that if you make that promise and you are determined to move forward and not backwards, he will actually forgive your tax debt. That's right, you heard me. He will actually forgive your tax debt. Assuming all the conditions have been met, he will forgive your tax debt. You know, most of us have experienced at some point a letter in the mail by the IRS. Many of us have secret skeletons in the closet called IRS delinquent payments, called tax assessed to you. That's the truth. And it turns out that Uncle Sam, all he wants us to do is to come forward and to say, you know, Uncle Sam, I'm going to bring myself to compliance. I'm going to file my tax returns like I should, even though I know I'm going to owe. He wants us to do all of that. Why? Because he understands the power of forgiveness, because he knows that if you apply and you work with him, i.e., you're going to go through an IRS enrolled agent, a representative of him. When you work with someone like us, we will ask the government, please work with me and my client. Let's arrange the payment so that it's not ungodly awful based on the law itself. Let's negotiate, come to an agreement together so that we can come up with the right amount that's right for the taxpayer. Because even Uncle Sam understands that you as a taxpayer have a fundamental right to be heard and to be seen by them and to negotiate those payments. Because his job isn't to make you poor. His job isn't to make you so that you're nothing. That is not his job. His job is to simply say, let's bring you to compliance. Let's bring you, show me effort. Show me that you're willing to move forward. And then ultimately what happens is we do our best to help him to forgive you for your tax debts. You know, I've taken clients that have owed over $500,000 in taxes and gotten the government to forgive it all. I've had clients that have owed as little as about $45-ish thousand, give or take, and negotiate all the way down to $3,000. Because even Uncle Sam understands that if he forgives you, you will do your best to be compliant in the future. You will do everything in your power as a taxpayer to make sure that you are paying your taxes like you should be. Hell, I still pay taxes too. But that's the reality of our lives, isn't it? We always pay taxes. Tax and death, baby. Two sure things we'll never get away from, right? So he even understands the power of forgiveness. How many of us have gone through that process, having the government forgive you for what you owe them? Don't we feel like a sense of relief? As a matter of fact, we can even see forgiveness happening in real time right now. You know, there's two things that come to my mind. The first thing, as it relates to our taxes and forgiveness, is this thing called the rebate check that we all receive. Many of us, Most of us received this rebate check, if you remember. Either it was $1,200 or $2,400 if you were married, and an extra $500 if you had some dependents and other rules, right? But every single one of us, for the most part, received this benefit. And here's something interesting. Uncle Sam understands that we're going through something very traumatic. He understands this pandemic is on the brink of ruining our lives. And so, from the kindness of his own heart, let's be real. The kindness of his own heart, he says, you know what? I will forgive. You don't have to pay taxes on the money that we fronted to you. It's forgiven. Let's not worry about it. And would you agree that when you received that stimulus payment that you felt like you could move forward? Did you feel like, especially if you were a business owner, like, oh, shoo, like I can still continue doing, I can still do marketing, I can still do this, I can still do that in an effort to help us stay alive. Another thing that Uncle Sam did for us as it relates to forgiveness is he said, check this out. I'm going to create this thing called the PPP, EIDL, paycheck protection program, tax credits, right? In essence, what he's saying is listen, we're in the process of streamlining the process so that all you have to do is check a box and says, Uncle Sam, I used the money like you said I should use it. And he forgives it, right? He's forgiving us. He feels good because he knows that he's keeping us in business. He knows that you and I are still able to use these funds to do the things that we have to do, to continue to pay our employees, to pay for our mortgages, to pay for the utilities, to pay for, that's it really, right? To keep us going. And then he said, listen, I'm going to create the EIDL and give you some money to keep you alive and keep you going. In many ways, you can think of it that he forgave the typical interests that are normally charged on these type of deals. Right? Forgave us. How do we feel as business owners? How do you feel as a business owner? Knowing that you don't have to worry about paying back this PPP as long as you follow the rules. It allows us to let go of the fear. It's the F word of the day. And it lets us let go of the fear, of the unknown, so that we as entrepreneurs can continue to keep the economy going, so that we as entrepreneurs can continue to bring happiness and joy to the people that interact with us. That's the ultimate truth, isn't it? We are all striving to bring happiness to the world. We want every single person to work with us, to step into our world so that we can bring them happiness. We only can bring them happiness when we've let go of our anger, when we've let go of the things that people did to us, and we step into and we embrace forgiveness. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's my story about the power of forgiveness. If you have any questions, comments, you'd like to connect with me, you know where to go. Let's Get Naked at nakedtaxtalk.com. Of course, if you enjoyed today's show and you found it valuable, I would love for you to subscribe and click the alert button. I'm shooting for the infamous 100 subscribers. I would love your help. I would love it if you would subscribe. I would be so appreciative. And of course, if you'd like to know more about doing business with me, how I can help you to transform your life, feel free to get on a call with me. And you can do that by visiting, you can send an email to letsgetnaked@nakedtaxtalk.com, or you can text 555-888 to Let's Get Naked, and SensorBot will take your information, and then I'll reach out to you. So that's it in a nutshell. The power of forgiveness. It allows us to let go, to move forward, to bring forth to the world our happiness, to help others to be successful. Until then, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of the week. And I look forward to communicating with you more and sharing on more topics and ideas. Have a great evening, morning, or day whenever you see my show.